Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes it breaks you. After a training accident left me paralysed from the neck down, I had to rebuild my body, my mind, and my life. I'm Ryan Curtis, and every episode we dig into the chaos that shapes who we become. So, welcome to the very first episode of Made in Chaos. Today's episode is just about letting you guys know why I'm doing the podcast and what the podcast is about. So, I was a professional MMA fighter and I had a life-changing training accident maybe about a year and a half ago now, where one of my arms got trapped and basically my teammate picked me up and slammed me onto the side where my arm was trapped and instantly snapped my neck, and I was paralysed from the neck down. The doctor said that it was one of the worst cases that he's ever seen. He said what it looked like had happened was I went up onto a second floor balcony, put my hands in my pockets and dived headfirst into the concrete. But that was only the physical part. More, to be honest, the worst part was the mental part. The time in the hospital, the isolation, like feeling really lonely in the hospital, the nurses having to feed me, clean me. I couldn't even hold my daughter at that point. So that was more of the mental part that was most challenging for me. But that was a challenge, but it's not the only challenge that I faced in my life. I'm from a place called Dublin 1, and I was actually voted the second worst place to live in all of Ireland. But I think to be honest, it was a great place to grow up. The people are so supportive. There's a great sense of community there. But like any other places, it has its own issues. It's very poverty stricken, and there's a lot of drug addiction in the area. Even in my own family, me father, he overdosed on drugs when I was only 2 months old, so I never really had a father. And then when I was maybe 9, I found my sister dead. She had a drug overdose too. It was a couple of years after that then again. My other sister, she died of a brain aneurysm. So, I've been through a lot even before the accident. But I suppose the whole premise of the podcast is I got a lot of people texting me now on social media, or if I just see people, and they're always asking me about, how I've got through dark times in my life. So it's just more about, giving mindset tools and having a positive mental attitude while overcoming adversity in your life, But I don't want the podcast to be like really heavy, and, I don't want when you're tuning into the podcast to be like, oh, geez, I better strap in, because it's very morbid and, sad. And, I want the podcast to be uplifting and inspiring. I want the podcast to be about the listeners to feel like, as long as they don't put a limit on themselves, that anything is possible, because even throughout all this, so many limits was put on me, and I never put a limit on myself. And that is the main reason why I'm sitting here today, and I'm not just bedridden, paralysed from the neck down, can't do anything for myself. That I didn't listen to anybody. I listened to me, because I knew what I was capable of. And we're also going to have guests on that have a lot to offer in terms of their own life experience and overcoming hardships in their own right. So I suppose the whole key to the podcast is about empowering people and trying to have a laugh while doing it. So why did I call the podcast Made in Chaos? Firstly, it was my fight name, Ryan Chaos Curtis. But I also believe that the worst time in your life make you the best version of yourself. Because I always say you can't grow when you're comfortable. Even in my fight career, when I was winning, I thought I never needed to change anything. But it wasn't until the losses that I was like, oh, hold on, I actually need to change some stuff here. And I think that about life as well. When you're going through the hardest times in your life, that actually makes you into the best version of yourself. Like even when this injury happened, people were telling me like, oh, this is the worst injury. The doctors and stuff were like, oh, you just don't understand how bad this injury is. But I never looked at it like, oh, this is like the worst time in my life. I just always thought like, oh, this is, I don't want to say great, but I just always looked at it like an opportunity to grow as a person, like, cause I always thought like I was unstoppable before this, but I just remember thinking like, wow, when I get through this, not if I get through this, when I get through this, I am going to be unstoppable, So I never really got stressed about the injury, and I think that was a big part of why I was able to overcome the injury as fast as I was able to overcome it, because I never put any stress or a burden on my body, and that's why my body was able to just repair to the best of its ability, because I just used to just think like, this is just a shit time that I'm going through, but it's only for a little while, and after a while then I'm just going to be back living my normal life, and to be honest, I practically am, I'm not fighting anymore, but apart from that my life looks the same, so I just think that out of the chaos I became a better father, a better friend, and a better human. And that's where the name comes from, being forged in the fire and being made in chaos. So obviously we're producing a podcast here, but I see the real value in building a community. Even for me, through fighting, the community I had through fighting, people coming to support me, taking time out of their lives, spending money, following me all around the world. It just, for me, community is so much. Even when I was paralysed from the neck down, I used to get letters and, messages from people all around the world. It was funny, I even got a message one time from an Irish person in Japan, and you used to get them from people in America and all around the world, and them little words of encouragement used to really lift me up during the dark times. Even fundraisers, that was so many fundraisers was done for me, people just wishing me well. I think for me community means a lot, because it really, really got me through the dark times, and like, what's a community to me means like a place where we can learn, grow, and support each other. But for me, like, I'm going to try and represent you guys to the best of my ability, and I'd like to see you guys get in touch and let me know what topics you'd like covered, and some potential guests you'd like to hear from, because there's could be like a lot of people out there who you find interesting that I might not necessarily know of, and there might be topics that you want covered that I probably wouldn't cover unless you guys are asking me. So yeah, I'd love to build that sense of community, and if like I just want to create a space that feels genuine, no bollocks talk, and it just deals with issues that we're all facing, because I feel like probably now more than ever, the mental health crisis is at an all-time high, and everybody could really deal with speaking more openly about how they're feeling, especially men, obviously, I can relate to that being a man myself, so I just think it's a real good time, the perfect time for it to come along right now, and yeah, I'd be so happy to have all you guys tune in. So I'm Ryan Curtis. Welcome to Made in Chaos, and I hope to see you all every week.